Khubor ka Batisi TV. Lawan Rashapi da ka Frank Motors. The dark is here to rule.
Ka Tnat Crime Investigation Department jong ka Tnat Pulit ka Jila Meghalaya haringkat ke Tehlakam bat ka Ministry of Home Affairs ka Sarkar India ha ka lai puai tre ulber 8,000 arpulai kala pelong ya ka jingat hirnia ha ka bai dei bat ki an bat ki kendon bat ya ki boj ba ki Kynhun runar ki jumlien ban pengop ya ki Briew khnang ban yo Khaïi bi an ya ki lanot ki bangat ha ka Jingshah riam. Ha kini kicing hirnia ke Belalong State Convention Center. Laisi mentalang da Director General of Police ke Jila Dr. L.R. Bishnoi, ke Director Jong ke Meghalaya State Judicial Academy ke Kong KML Nongbri, ke Chairperson Jong ke Meghalaya State Commission for Protection of Child Rights ke Kong Yamon Langs Iem bat Kiwei.
Next, I would like to call Inspector Kynhun to felicitate.
Opportunity to be a part of this workshop. I was told that many judicial officers are also present here, so we can have the interactive sessions and we can share our thoughts about the problems of the human trafficking. The human trafficking, when we discuss things about human trafficking, many ideas come to our mind. Many thoughts bombard our minds. What is a human trafficking? Why this problem is prevalent in India? What are the likely causes for these problems? What are the factors responsible for the human trafficking? And what is the existing legal provisions to take care of these problems? How this problem can be solved in India? All these thoughts come to our mind. If you have interest in history, in 11th century, the Alberuni visited India. And after that, in 14th century, Ibn Battuta also came here. Both of these travelers, they mentioned about the problems of the slaves system in India, where the human beings were purchased and sold like any other commodity. This slavery system is just like a component of human trafficking. And the human trafficking has many facets. The Article 370 of the IPC and the Immoral Trafficking Prevention Act 1956, they have described the human trafficking in very details. So basically, I'm not going for exact legal definition, but it has to be three components in it. First is action, second is transportation, and third is the purpose. So the Article 370 has mentioned 5 or 6 action points. You have to take a person either by fraudulent means or by deceit or by the forceful means, like that, 5 or 6 factors they have mentioned. The trafficking victims, the shelter or harborers, the receptions, destinations, And then purpose. There are many purposes why the human being indulges in purchasing and the selling of the human being itself. So there are many purposes are given, like the commercially exploitations, commercially sexual exploitations, bonded labors, the beggings, the drug peddlings, organ donations, even the domestic servant. So these are the few purposes. So as per investigations, if any of these purposes, one action, one transportation point, and one purpose, if IO can prove it in the court, then case can be convicted. But it is quite a challenging task, you know. Why it is a challenging? Because proving component, all these three parts of any components is not that easy. It requires a hell lot of efforts by the IO at his level, as well as the efforts by the supervisory officers. Then many acts are involved. The multiple of legal acts are involved. Those who are students of law, they may be aware that other than the IPC and Immoral Trafficking Prevention Act 1956, it also involved the Child Marriage Prevention Act. It also involved the Bonded Labor Prevention and Regulations Act. It also involved the Migrations of the Labourers Prevention Act, Prevention and Regulations Act. So when the multiples of the acts are involved, then IO must be aware about the legal provisions of all these acts. So that is why the investigation is quite challenging in these cases, and the conviction rate is quite inadequate. In Meghalaya, if we go through for last 6-year data, only 19 cases were registered, 6-year data. And out of these 19 cases, only I think 3 or 4 cases were convicted successfully. So you can imagine the task is quite challenging and very difficult. Very difficult is as compared to the cases registered normal under the IPC Act. Very, very difficult for investigating officers. So that is why the government of India, the Supreme Court, the state governments, all of them, they have realized the gravity of the crime, and n number of provisions were laid down. The government of India, I think 5 or 6 years back, they have opened the Women's Safety Division in the Ministry of Home Affairs. This division was not there earlier. Only when the human trafficking cases were started showing increasing trend, then they have opened this division. And in the Women's Safety Division, under Women's Safety Divisions, there is the Prevention of Trafficking or the Human Trafficking Cell they have opened. And the Joint Secretary level nodal officer was appointed to supervise the provisions of the Trafficking Act cases throughout India. They have also constituted the Anti-Human Trafficking Unit in each and every state, in each and every district of India. There are nearly 700 districts in India. So in all those districts, AHTU, Anti-Human Trafficking Units, were opened. But unfortunately, these units, they have to perform multiple tasks. They are not exclusively committed unit to take care of the anti-human trafficking cases. So, and secondly, the team is not very big team. The team is led by inspector. It has 2 sub-inspector, 2 head constable, and 2 constable in it. So this is the new, after the particularly in the 2013, after Bachpan Bachao Andolan versus the Government of India Act, the Government of India and the Supreme Court decisions, they have laid down certain provisions, and by keeping those provisions in view, the anti-human trafficking units were constituted, and the Supreme Court has given various guidelines to sensitize people, to organize workshop, to create awareness program as a preventive steps. as a preventive step. So that is why we are organizing this workshop, and these workshops are funded by the Government of India, Ministry of Home Affairs. So what can be the likely causes which come to your mind? Why the people indulge in purchasing and selling of our own fellow brothers and sisters? So definitely there may be some causes. So if you can divide all the causes into factors, that broadly it can be two. One is push factor, another is pull factor. What can be the likely push factor? Like the socio-economic and political causes are the push factor. The economic causes is a very simple: poverty, unemployment, lack of job opportunities, the backwardness of the area, lack of development in particular area. These are the push factors under economic head. And the social factor, the new officers may not be aware, that India is a very unique from social dimension of point of view. For example, in Meghalaya, what can be the likely social factor? The factor which is most prevalent in Meghalaya is the broken families or the single motherhood. The single motherhood rates and broken family rate in Meghalaya is comparatively high as compared to the other sector. So these are the social factors which put the young boys and girls under tremendous strain, and they become vulnerable towards the trafficking. Then there are some political factors also which are not equally present everywhere, but the factors, for example, in the Myanmar, the Rohingya are prosecuted politically, so the Rohingya will become more vulnerable. And in the history, you all are aware, the Jews were prosecuted by the Nazis, so they were more vulnerable towards the migrations and the traffickings. So these are the push factors. What can be the likely pull factors? The pull factor is like job opportunity. The people, under the garb of giving job to them, they are taken from one part of India to other parts, and also internationally. In Punjab, it is very common in the name of giving them employment in Canada, America. People are taken there, and then later on they realize that we have been cheated. So this job opportunity is a pull factor. The modeling, many young girls were taken to Mumbai and other cities under the garb of modeling, and later on they were pushed into the commercial sexual exploitation business. So these are the likely pull factors which makes the particular section of the society vulnerable. When I was Special DG CID in Assam, then two interesting cases came to our notice. The young girls from the Nepal, they were taken first to the India, and then very interestingly they were taken to the Myanmar. Their names were changed, their new passports were made, and after that many Mizo girls were found there from Mizoram, and from then they were taken to the Thailand. So interestingly, out of the whole group, one young girl, I don't know how, but she got the number of the SP, that IJOL, and then she rang up from there. Then IJOL team rushed, and we also coordinated, and the one or two girls were saved from the Myanmar side. So it means that not only the interstate gangs, but international gangs are also involved in it. Some Mizo girls were taken to Myanmar. After that, their names and everything was changed, and then young girls were taken to the Thailand and other countries. And in one such incident, one young girl from the Mizoram, she jumped from the 14th floor in Bangkok, and she immediately collapsed on the spot. And the parents were not able to take her dead body because the identity was different. Passport, photographs, and everything was different. Names were different. So it has international ramification in that way. Interstate gangs are very, very actively involved in it. So, the purpose are very clear, but it is very, very difficult to establish these purpose in the court of law. Because IOs, they are not equipped to go scientifically and pursue this case vigorously till the purpose is proved, till the action is proved. Because victims are poor. We have to keep two things in mind, then victims of trafficking are very poor economically, as well as they are the lower rung of the sections of the society. And on other side, the so-called the persons who indulge in trafficking, they are from very, very powerful section of the society. So they have their organized network. They have lot of financial powers also. As a whole, this is a very, very lucrative business because it generates huge amounts of money, and the risk for the accused is bare minimum because he exploits the loopholes in the law. And he knows that it will be difficult for police to prove it in the court, and conviction rate will not be very high. So even if we get, the missing children, the Supreme Court has recently given decision, particularly after Bachpan Bachao Andolan, that any missing children reported by the parents or by the village headmen, it should be treated as a criminal case. Earlier we used to make missing entries in the general diary in the Thana only, but after Supreme Court decision, any missing children, it should be treated as a criminal case, and preferably it should be treated as a trafficking, so that we can investigate from that point of view. But another problem in whole the trafficking scenario is, even after rescuing and rehabilitation of the victims, it is not easy to rehabilitate them. Because for children, of course, the special provisions are there under JJ Act, where the Child Welfare Committee is empowered to take the decision about their rehabilitation and other things. But if the adult victims are there are not many legal provisions in India, the law students must be aware, to rehabilitate them. So recently, the government of India has started, taking care of the trafficking victims under Ujjwala schemes also, and new schemes are just forgetting name. It is, I think, Sawa Aadhar scheme or something like that. Sawa Aadhar means that let them be self-sufficient or something like that. So there is no specific homes for the adult victims in India. For child victims, there are observation homes, there are special homes under JJ Act, but for adult victims there is no home. So when the adult victims are recovered, so first of all, they will not cooperate with the police because they will say, I have come here for the jobs only. And even if they cooperate, then parental support will not be there, then family support will not be there, the village support will not be there, because the villagers, because of their lack of awareness, they treat it as a social stigma, and for them, generally, they don't accept it very frequently. So the rehabilitation is a real problem. So not adequate infrastructures are available, not adequate financing provisions are there. By keeping this in view, to my mind, the first and foremost requirement is that each and every individual, each and every citizen of the state should be aware. We should be fully aware that what are the dynamics behind the trafficking and how our awareness can solve the problem. I have quoted the examples of the Mizoram girl who dared to ring up the SP Aizols and how her life was saved and how she was rescued. So this happened only because she was aware. She might be carrying SP's number and she may be aware about the 112 and the helpline numbers and all those things. So awareness is a very, very crucial component to overcome this problem. The use of technology is huge. Technology can play a very colossal role to overcome these problems, tracking the individuals, finding the individuals, and then third will be the coordination among all stakeholders. When I was serving as special DG CID there, we found that if there is a regional alliance among the NGOs of one state with the other states, then the NGOs of that particular states cooperate. Otherwise, they will not give much weightage. If the NGOs from the Shillong, if they go to Mumbai to recover particular girls, and if they have already allied with the NGO of their state, then it will become easy for the local NGO to take the help of that particular NGO and also the police and the civil administration. So the coordination is very, very important. Then the role of media. The media has colossal role to play in the society to generate awareness among the masses about the problems, about the nature of the crimes, about the rescue and rehabilitation. If they point out certain mistakes, then administration will be more sensitive to overcome the problems. So media role is also important. That is how we can overcome the problems. Fortunately, I'm happy to inform you that after 2016, the 2016 was very bad year for Meghalaya as well as the whole northeastern states, when the maximum number of trafficking cases were registered. After that, it is showing downward trend, but unfortunately in few pockets of India, particularly Jharkhand, West Bengal, and the few districts of the Assam and Andhra, the trafficking cases have shown the increasing trend, because after Corona, particularly everyone has faced the Corona conundrums, and it has created a lot of financial problems. The business has gone down, the people have suffered economically, and to overcome this problem, the people realize that we have to go out for the jobs, and because of that, the placement agencies, they exploited the situations, and the trafficking cases have gone up in certain pockets of India, not everywhere. But Meghalaya after 2016 by and large is showing downward trend, so that is a happy sign for all of us. And I hope that jointly, unitedly, if we work together, we can overcome this problem.
As I've said, we understand that human trafficking is illegal under the Indian law. However, it is a significant problem that keeps on prevailing and continuing. And yes, we understand that human trafficking covers various areas. What are the issues that would fall within the definition of human trafficking? Most of us, when we think of human trafficking on many occasions, we would think only of women, of children. We forget that even men sometimes are trafficked for many various purposes. Now, when we look at men, women and children, they are trafficked in India for various reasons, for diverse reasons. Women and girls, sometimes they are being trafficked for commercial sex purposes. And of course, this is a rampant problem. And we understand that these attractions are being brought into the areas where children are very vulnerable, and they fall into the trap, if I may call that. And of course, we can think of forced marriages. We can think about areas where people are, they traffic children in areas where the gender ratio is skewed in favor of men. We have all these problems here. And yes, at the same time, we also have cases where people, as what the Honorable DGP has mentioned, going back to history, we have instances of slavery. Now here, when we look at bonded labor, that is another modern form of slavery, where people are being forced to work. Forced labor is a different thing, bonded labor is a different thing altogether. Bonded labor is here because people are in debt. Either they have been engaged in certain occupation, or they owe money, and they are forced to work as a bonded laborer. And of course, forced labor is also there, where people are forced to work against their will. These are all forms of trafficking. And yes, when we look at men and boys, they are also engaged as escorts in massage parlors. And yes, and even to the point where, they lose their whole sense of identity, but are forced to engross themselves in this new kind of occupation. Now, children again, they form a significant number of victims when we look at this issue of human trafficking. Now children, they are engaged as factory workers, at the same time they are engaged as domestic workers, and also sometimes, or maybe in this modern day and age, they are also engaged as armed combatants, where we have these terrorists and insurgent groups. Why? Why are children engaged? Because it's cheap, because they can be forced and mesmerized into believing that they are doing something to protect something. All this is to aid and help this market of sexual exploitation. So these stories of survivors, I feel, will help you understand better how crucial this problem of human trafficking is. I feel that all of you should understand because when we talk about to sensitize all the stakeholders, it does not mean only to sensitize about what the legal provisions say. It's not only to sensitize how do we approach the legal system, what is the prosecution, what is the punishment. Yes, you will have a session on that where all the legal provisions will be addressed. But we also should understand sensitize means we have to be sensitive to what the victim has gone through. Because there are cases, because victims do not get the opportunity to get out of that cycle. They themselves are the ones who engage in further human trafficking.
What is helping that commodification, the objectification of people? If you take a look at some of the films, the advertisements that come out, you'll find that, there's a lot of, personhoods, especially women and children, even children, and I'm happy now the advertisements for men are engaged also, but there's a commodification, the very fact that we look at them as objects. If you look at, selling a car, why do we need a woman? There's always these innuendos that are there, that exist. So we're bombarded on all sides by these messages that sex is good, that this is the ultimate for a lot of people, and then we talk about, yes, we can exploit people, we can use them depending on how clever we are, and the whole of even our songs, they commodify, they objectify, certain peoplehood, I said, persons. So this is something that we need to think about. Our culture is so bombarded by that. And I cringe sometimes, when I hear songs and even the language that we speak. We have dehumanized and devalued the things that we should treasure. Women, children, even men. So that is one thing that I wanted to say. And then, of course, we find a lot of cases, some cases at least, which has come through the commission, and that is grooming that comes on, online grooming through Facebook, through WhatsApp messages, and through all the Instagram and whatever kind of mediums of social media. There's a lot of grooming that takes place. And young kids especially, they get fascinated by that. And I want to bring something here which is so pertinent, and that is especially the pandemic has taught us this and has opened up a new kind of door for us, and a new domain where we have to struggle more, and that is the impact of social media on our kids. This is something very real and threatening and frightening, in fact. Because see, when we tell our children, don't go there, that's not a safe place, physically we can do that. As good parents, we tell them, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. But how do you tell a kid, don't go to those this domain, like the world is totally open in that virtual domain. When we ourselves don't know the rules, we don't know the boundaries, we don't know the doors, how can we tell them that this is good, this is bad? So I always encourage parents, like, please get to Instagram, please get to Facebook, please be techno-savvy, so that at least you know where your children are going. Otherwise, they'll just say, we've done this, and you don't know there's a dark web, there are a whole lot of, threatening kind of thing, in like candy kind of thing, dangerous kind of activities. So you have online pornography, you have online, as I said, grooming of kids, and they get into chats and so on, which gets more dangerous. you know, if somebody engages in them. And so our children are hijacked that way. I believe when we talk about trafficking as transport of bodies from one place to the other, but sometimes you needn't go from a particular place. I've heard of cases where, you know, kids, they lure other kids to get engaged in, to engage in with alcohol or drugs or something like that. They force them, or they just dupe them and drug them and so on. And then they take a video of that and then blackmail those children. And it has happened in many cases also where the children, they are threatened, like, we'll show your parents this. And so they get scared. So then they are given these numbers, these phone numbers, that when we call, you come. So they are trafficked under their parents' nose. They get into prostitution and so on, right under their parents' nose. Like they're wearing their uniform, but they've had a call and like from someone, the bosses, the pimps, the middlemen, and then they go. And that's how they get trafficked in that way. So we don't know what kind of trauma our kids face, the ones who've gone into these kind of traps. But we'll talk about that a bit later. So then, as we said, even during the pandemic, I've heard that apart from when we talk about organ trade and so on, that even the skin, you know, people, again, that is what we hype up, you know, that beautiful skin and all, even guys are fair and handsome. Is it fair and handsome? Kind of thing, you know, we just kind of jump on that, and therefore you can see the obsession that people have of beauty and skin products. So that's why, and people, they even have bathed in blood. Just recently, there was a father who kind of bit his stepfather, rather. He bit his 1.5-year-old kid, stepdaughter, in the neck and licked her blood. Perhaps maybe to get rejuvenated. So you don't know what a kind of weird, kind of perverse, kind of impulses that people have, you know. But they exploit the most vulnerable, and that is children. That's the most frightening of all. So again, we talk about just recently, by the way, I watched a video of a 17-year-old. Have anybody seen that? A 17-year-old in the rat hole of the coal mines. I don't know whether that's illegal or not, but here was this guy, you know, he's a YouTuber, and he's getting a lot of likes and subscribe. You know, a lot of people have subscribed to his video. I mean, here is blatantly he's crossing the line. I mean, he's a child under 18 in that kind of labor situation, maybe bonded labor, but he's also using technology to kind of speak out, and perhaps he doesn't know the consequences. But then these are the things that are happening today. There's a whole lot of things I don't want to get over there, but we have to see. But where are our children going and what are children doing? That is the scary part, because too many things are happening. And so then what we need to do, there's another point that I want to state, because previous speakers already spoken about the push and pull factors. Push and pull factors here. You know, the pull factors, talking about jobs and cream jobs and so on. I have only one word to describe them. I call them dream peddlers, because they use the psychology, you know, that these are dreams that you can dream, whether it's a good job, an opportunity to go out, modeling, or good money, or a chance to get out from a condition of being an orphan, or poverty, and so on. So they're selling dreams. They hit on the vulnerable with the very thing that attracts people. So the strong pull factors there. And regarding the push factors, the socioeconomic factors, and so on, and the offers, and the people who are vulnerable. By the way, how do we know that the people are vulnerable? The predators, they know, because they have observation points, you know, where they observe who are the vulnerable, and so they prey on the vulnerable. So when we talk about that, a good thing that the Indian government has done is that they're trying to match schemes and so on to those socioeconomic families, which are like poor, you know, have them like connect between the two, so that at least the lives of those who are caught in poverty and caught in helplessness, in economic helplessness, you can say, there's a connect, and they would not want to go out as much, you know. Hopefully some will be saved because of these schemes and strategies that are there.